So that's an excellent question. And yes, we are always looking at opportunities for additional professional development. Often our teachers will find avenues or the programs that they can go to, and there's an approval process that goes, that they can go through with us. On the board agenda, that's why you see the registration and travel reimbursement costs that are oftentimes seeking approval. But in addition to that, yes, we will look for things that can be brought in, and also reach out to the teachers, because they might know of organizations that they find the most useful to bring in as well.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So just a quick question regarding the number of AP tests. I noticed that we're up 75 students, which is a pretty big jump over the 5-year data. Is it because the class is much bigger? Are we encouraging more students to press themselves to try AP, which I would be totally supportive of, or is it, what's the reason for the jump up in number of students? Because obviously the more students you have in there, I just want to make sure that we're properly assessing students that really should be in an AP class too.
So that's another great question, and yes, you're right, we did see a big jump. So I think it's a combination of having more students in the classes, but one thing that is notable, and I'll just, when you look at the participation rates up there, I'd say collectively across all the APs, the spring of 2021 probably had one of the highest participation rates among all the students in the AP program. Typically we might have some courses in the 70s, the 80s, but you saw up there, other than one course, everything was 95 and above, in terms of participation rate. So I do think we've got more students, but it's also a very high participation rate in taking the assessment.
So what you're saying is that in previous years, there's been less participation rate, and maybe it's more of those students who feel they're going to get above a 3.
I think that's part of it, but I also think we have more students taking AP courses too.
Got it. Thank you.
Philomena? The global average is what it is. It's the global average across the world of everybody who takes these exams. You know what, in the past, we've never really, the global has just been that benchmark. We do the state and global. We've never really reported out on national. Not to say that we can't. I'd have to see if it's available. I'm sure it's somewhere on one of those reports.
And then the other question is, can you give perspective from guidance counselors how colleges are accepting ACTs and SATs? What's the dynamic? I mean, when I went to college, it was the only, it was like the number one criteria. Like, where's it fall now in admissions?
Well, I think it's going to wind up depending on your college university, but at my understanding is at this point the majority are test optional, going into this year. So that was a trend that started when we saw a large cancellation of ACT and SAT administrations. I know that was a very high anxiety time for everybody that was involved, because thinking we have to get these tests in, and for some courses, for some programs, some schools, it probably was important. But I think across the board, when you see all these exams nationwide being canceled, there needs to be some leniency there. So, yep. Okay. Anything else? Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Carroll pointed out.
Are they on? Is yours on? Is your mic on?
Okay, hello, yeah. Thanks again, Mr. Sutherland, for that extensive report. One of the things I'd like to point out is that, especially in the areas of the AP testing, is the fact that you have to remember that in the year 2019-20, those students were in the class until the middle of March. Also what happened there was what you have to remember is that AP testing takes place in May. So, you know, for those students, they scored a little bit better. We saw some of those grades a little bit higher. And I think that the the mix-up last year of students being virtual, a lot of students being virtual, us having a minimal amount of students in the classrooms. I know when I first came in December, as I strolled the halls, I was looking at maybe 3 or 4 students in a classroom. And then, as you remember, we merged and we got away from the AB schedule and those kids who wanted to come to school. So we saw classes gain in size a little bit, where we maybe we're up to 12 or 13 with students coming every day. And then finally, when we got to May, when these tests would be taking place, that's the time when the bulk of the students, or the majority of the students, were back in class with the regular schedule. So, you know, we have to take a lot of things into consideration. However, we have to keep in mind that we want to make the best programs available for our students, and more importantly, give them the support that they need. So I think that's, you know, a little bit that we see there, the indication of what's going on. But certainly we want to make it possible for the students to do better, and we will work on that. As I move on now, I'd like to also talk about, had a couple of questions from the last meeting I'd like to address. The first one was, I believe, from Mrs. Eng, talking about the Republican Club. There was a lot of discussion on clubs, and I did check into that, and I was told that the students were changing it, or there was an interest in changing the name to the Conservative Club. And then we found out today that they want to go back to Ramapo Republican Club. So that is on the agenda for tonight. Mrs. Molo had a concern about the JSA, Junior Statesman. That is still running. So I reached out to the advisor, and they had a meeting last Thursday. They've been posting things on Schoology and so forth. So, Ms. Molo, I don't know if you're in here, but if you want, you can have your son reach out to the advisor, Mr. Vasili, and certainly get him involved in that again. That would be helpful. And I know one of the other questions, the Donahue, I think it is talking about the Constitution, what we did. So I finally, I remembered to take the paperwork on this. This time, of course, we know this Constitution Day is September 17th. And for examples, there were lessons that took place or discussions that were taught on Constitution Day, included but not limited to voting rights in colonial America, voting rights and democracy, political structures in colonial America as a precursor to the Constitution, progressive era amendments, European influences used in the formation of the United States Constitution, and the process of building a government past and present. In addition to this, the Constitution is taught all throughout the year, looking at various aspects and how it changes, and things that we talk about in daily life, and how it reflects or is reflected in the Constitution. So that's what happened on Constitution Day. I had that information. And now I would like to share with everyone the agenda. It's a little bit revised. I think, Ms. Demetrio, I don't believe our audience has the latest one, so I want to get back to, in the club section, again, we'll see the Republican Club. And I want to point out that Light a Candle Club and the Women's Empowerment Club are not new. Those are not new. They've been running. Again, it's volunteer clubs. Also, please be aware that when we get to finance, we are doing finance 1, so F1 through F9. There was just a clerical error there. So F1 through F9. And as we move along, we'll be adding also a P18, which Mr. Lamb will bring up later when we get there, and I think that's important. The other thing I just want to remind our board members and our audience that any discussion around personnel or any identifying courses or programs that a teacher is running, we cannot discuss personnel, so please refrain from mentioning names. If a staff member is not RICed, then we have no right to be discussing them in public. So I just want to make that clear to everybody. All right? So, you know, we're moving along. So before I want to wish everybody a happy Halloween when we get there over the weekend, and, and continue on the path. So my last meeting here will be November 8th, and then Dr. Dionisio will be coming in on the 9th, so I look forward to seeing you then. But and that's where we are. So without any further ado, I'd like to move it over to Ms. LaForgia.
And I'd like to move it back to Mr. Lamb.
Okay, thank you, Ms. LaForgia. Business Administrator Report. You saw a presentation on ESIP last month. We did advertise the RFP. Last week, we had building walkthroughs with ESCOs, which are the companies that are approved by the state to manage the ESIP construction projects. Just to summarize again, an ESIP allows a district to issue debt to pay for building improvements, and those building improvements need to include energy savings, such as installing LED lighting, potentially solar, replacing boilers and other energy savings, and then the savings from the reduction in energy are used in the budget to pay off the bonds. So you get improved buildings at no increase to taxpayers. All of the firms that did the building walkthroughs with us last week are experienced in managing ESIPs, so we are confident that when we get the proposals the second week of November, that we will have good options during the interview process, which will take place end of November, early December. We are talking to consultants regarding an auction for electricity rates. That's something our district has done once every couple of years for a long time in order to lock in lower rates than the average homeowner would get. Let's say we're able to get wholesale rates. Just like we bid out products and services, we conduct a bid, and some firms are willing to offer us lower electrical rates than others. And that's something we'll be putting forward to the Finance Committee soon. And we're already starting our budget process for the 2022-2023 school budget. So the principals and supervisors will be getting their budget sheets soon. So the budget doesn't get approved until next spring, but we're already starting that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. Okay. Any questions on anything that was talked about? Move off to public discussion of agenda and non-agenda items. Please limit your time to 3 minutes and be conscientious of your time. Let's be civil. Board members, please refrain from all comments during public session and follow Robert's rules. Further, the board will not be answering questions directly. We will all be taking notes, and if you have any questions, any answers, if we have any answers, they will be offered at the end of the public session, or one of us will get back to you soon. Please state your name and town. What time do we have? 9:10. Can I have a motion to open to public session? Okay. 9:10. Any questions?
Yes.
Mr. Kinney?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Ms. Koulikortis?
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan?
Yes.
Ms. LaForgia?
Yes. Okay. Open to public discussion. Please state your name and town. And Mr. Lamb, do we have the 3 minutes? Are you ready?